Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth.
Here we're in Brighton Park in Chicago on 39th and Kedzie. Was a shooting earlier, an ICE-involved shooting. We want to demand an investigation. There are escalating violence. There are escalating violence in the city. This is not making anyone safer. These raids, you saw that the raids that just did a few days ago, there were innocent people.
President Donald Trump says the Illinois governor and Chicago mayor should be jailed as they oppose his deployment of National Guard troops for his immigration and crime crackdown. Trump wrote on Truth Social that Mayor Brandon Johnson and Governor J.B. Pritzker should be in jail for failing to protect ICE officers. He's often singled out Chicago and Illinois because they have some of the country's strongest immigrant protections. He's also said that the nation's third largest city is a hellhole of crime, even though police statistics show significant drops in most crimes, including homicides. National Guard troops from Texas are positioned outside Chicago, despite a lawsuit by the state and city to block the deployment. The state's governor, one of Trump's fiercest critics, has called the president a wannabe dictator.
Let me be clear. Donald Trump is using our service members as political props and as pawns in his illegal effort to militarize our nation's cities.
Chicago will not be used as a political prop. Chicago will not be intimidated, and we will not be silent.
In posts on X, Mayor Johnson said, "I'm not going anywhere," and Governor Pritzker said, "I will not back down," in response to Trump.
Yeah, there's no denying that the dream has turned into a nightmare, not just for the illegal aliens, but for a number of their backers and supporters. This morning's briefing is not the discussion around the fact that foundational Black Americans are not being rounded up and deported by ICE, despite the wishful thinking that's been put out by numerous tethers and clowns, lying by omission and trying to infer it, but it's not true. There are no massive protests in the street. All you got are the usual comparative handful of attention seekers pulling stunts at ICE facilities, which are being repelled very easily. Clout chasers are out here trying to get a following, but it's just not working. And speaking of not working, Chicago's mayor, Brandon Johnson's been breaking his neck and twisting himself into knots from the moment that he became mayor to protect illegal aliens, shifting all the city's resources to it and basically telling the Black residents that they don't matter. After all, he feels as if he can hold on to office and indeed make it to higher office without them. Clearly, the end game for people like Brandon Johnson and others has been the expectation that at some point there was going to have to be some sort of mass amnesty that would be granted. That way, all of these illegal aliens that they were trying to cater to and curry the favor of would be converted into a solid voting bloc. At least, that was the expectation, but the orange man's thrown a monkey wrench in the works on that one. But for Brandon Johnson, this has been his constituency, and he hasn't even had the decency to make a secret out of it. Okay, then, I say, since those are the people that he's trying to get the support of, and he thinks that those are the people who matter, let them bail him out. They should be the ones who stick up for him. Yeah, the orange man is already threatening that he's going to be going after Brandon Johnson and Governor Pritzker. And since these guys made it obvious that they were going to be using the illegal aliens basically as their protection, let them do it now. Let's see if these people will lift a finger to protect Brandon Johnson. Will the Hispanic or Asian or African Caribbean immigrants that he thought he was the mayor of do anything to protect him now or stick up for him? Or will they do as they've always done in their home countries and go to the political strongman and try to make a deal with him? See, that's what actually happens in the real world. The Black media has been telling you this for 17 plus years now. The reason that the Hispanics in particular broke for Trump was because of their history. Historically, Latin America has had one dictator after the next, one corrupt ruling family after the next, one junta, one coup, one authoritarian regime after the next. They're used to it. And it's the same in Asia and Africa and the Caribbean. They couldn't make the adjustment to a place where we had made it easy and where they had some breathing room so that they could actually join with us to expand that breathing room. They simply couldn't make that transition. Instead, when they came to the U.S., where foundational Black Americans had been undermining the kind of authoritarian influences that forced them to flee their home countries, they didn't band together with us. because they had never fought the fascists in their own home countries. Instead, they reverted to type and did what they did back home, kowtow to power. As the old saying goes, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. And that's the reason why all of this nonsense that we see people out here performing for the cameras, it's not going to go anywhere, especially not with the very illegal aliens that they think they're doing favors for. The illegals who Brandon Johnson's been trying to do the most for are far more likely to go to Trump and try to cut a deal with him. But what they won't be doing is putting themselves on the line for Brandon Johnson. These groups have never advocated to have a black person in charge over them. They come from cultures that are viciously and violently anti-black. And by the way, that also goes for a number of these African and Caribbean immigrants as well. A lot of them also have an anti-black mentality. So since these people were not sticking up for black empowerment, and they definitely weren't impressed with having a black person as their leader in their home country, they're not about to start now. And just for the record, please don't be naive enough to think that the Orange Man won't actually try to bring charges against these guys. I'm not saying that he definitely will. What I am saying is, don't put it past him. James Comey has already had charges brought against him, and as far as the Orange Man is concerned, if the Democrats are willing to conduct lawfare against a former president, why shouldn't he conduct lawfare against one of their mayors or governors? Everybody's fair game now as Trump sees it. So no, it is not outside the realm of possibility that Trump might actually try to make good on this threat. After all, as he once said,
"What do you have to lose by trying?"
But this morning's briefing is about the reckoning that's occurring. It's about how bootlicks and controlled opposition can wind up outsmarting themselves. What Brandon Johnson and his Democratic pals are hoping for is that we will do what we did in 2020 and rise up on their behalf. Well, he made it clear who his constituency is, and it wasn't the freedom fighters who were in the streets 5 years ago. Brandon Johnson had no problem with the thugs in blue. He was always tap dancing every chance he got, so that being the case, let him go to the police unions. Let them support him. Let him go to all those people that he was being mealy-mouthed and all linguini-spined for. Let them stick up for him. Because that's who it is that he wanted the support of. That's who he's been speaking up for. That's who he's been delivering tangibles for. That's who he's been catering his policies towards. Let him go to the illegal aliens, to the police. Let him go to political whores and prostitutes like Rahm Emanuel. Let them rise up for him. Go ahead and tell people that the very racist and bigots from Latin America, the folks who are coming in from Asia who like to shoot black people in their stores, if not in the streets, let those people go ahead and be the ones that he sticks out front and says, hey, we need to make sure that as many people who come from anti-black cultures as possible are let into the United States. See how well that goes over. These racists were shook 5 years ago. They were so scared the bastards were under siege. Even Donald Trump was surrounded in the White House and scared to come out. This time around, the streets are a lot more quiet. Sure, the white media can try to make it seem as if, oh, there's just tumult in the streets. It's chaos, I tell you. No, it's not. There's a couple of demonstrations in front of a couple of ICE offices in Dallas and Chicago, and that's pretty much it. And these so-called demonstrations are not being led by freedom fighters in the streets. It's being led by the usual suspects, the Democrats' would-be insiders, their handful of corrupt preachers and social activists and such, the clowns they got on the payroll, individuals who depend on the DNC for every crumb of their daily bread. That's who they got. A far cry from the masses who had taken to the streets 5 years ago. And you better believe Trump knows it. What's happening right now, this is nothing compared to what was going down in 2020. And the Orange Man is taking full advantage of this fact. Where was Brandon Johnson at 5 years ago, by the way? Was he siding with the uprising, or was he kissing the hairy racist rump of the Rahm Emanuels and other Democratic influence peddlers that he was trying to get money and support from? We all know the answer. And this is the result. Rahm Emanuel ain't riding to the rescue. Far as Rahm Emanuel's concerned, that's one less Negro that he has to contend with in the future, just in case Brandon Johnson had any delusions that he was going to run for higher office. Rahm Emanuel is only trying to make more room for himself and his psychopathic siblings. He could care less about Brandon Johnson, unless Brandon Johnson's on his knees doing God knows what. The Democrats have no one to blame for their current position but themselves. See, the problem for controlled opposition is not if they lose power. The true danger for them is if they keep it. The entire mission of controlled opposition is to disempower the segment of the population who threaten the dominant society. Controlled opposition are not really in charge, so whether or not they hold office or not is irrelevant. But if they do hold on to office, and the people wise up to the scam, then they're in trouble. Controlled opposition serve the interests of the dominant society, not by enforcing the dominant society's rule, but by making sure that the freedom fighters, the agitators, the downtrodden never organize to the point that they can challenge it. Their job is to tell the oppressed that they need to get behind the controlled opposition, and those guys will make change. Just trust them. Of course, their actual job is to get you to sit on your hands year after year, which inevitably turns into decade after decade and eventually generation after generation, while nothing changes. Even if the controlled opposition are in office, if they accomplish their job of stymieing the forces of justice, then at some point the dominant society no longer needs them anymore. That's what you're seeing. Push comes to shove. The people who the controlled opposition were told you got to keep them in line, well, you show you can't keep them in line? Well, hell, why do we have to keep you on the payroll anymore? The Democrats have spent decades making politics safe for the very forces of fascism that they now claim to resist. But in reality, they've been on the same side of those same fascists. When the Democrats went whole hog to be the handmaidens for those corporate interests, just like the Republicans, they chose to become adjacents to the fascists, because most corporations are fascist in nature. That's how corporations operate. They're certainly not democratic. Even the ones with unions are not democratic because the workers can't vote the CEO out if he's doing a rotten job or trying to send their job overseas. They're still nothing more than private tyrannies. And now we see the Larry Ellisons of the world trying to take this to a grotesque extreme. He and other corporate authoritarians are consolidating their power over the society. It's simply a fact the billionaires have never just wanted to sit on a beach somewhere and enjoy their money. They've always looked at their huge amounts of wealth as a way to play God and to reshape the society the way they want it to be. And as for the people, they are at best just pawns to be moved around, or they're just useless eaters who contribute nothing to the 1%'s wealth creation and hence should be eliminated. And for chumps like Brandon Johnson and others, the new society's oligarchs' vision doesn't include them. This is why these silly Negroes trying to get in good with the Democrats, or Republicans for that matter, in the hopes of getting a political patronage job, that was always a sucker bet. These shills dream of being the next Barack Obama, meaning a tether who kisses the right behinds, and then gets rewarded with a nice elevator ride to the top. But that was only a trick that he gets to pull. They always forget that while the Larry Ellisons can give you tons of money, what they can't give you are votes. Larry Ellison only gets to cast one ballot, just like everyone else. Huge campaign donations are useless when a critical mass of the electorate are on code. When those disaffected people finally remember that the antidote to organized money is an organized vote. But judging by how events are starting to unfold, Brandon Johnson won't have either of those things. He's probably about to watch the end of his political future, or more than that. He bet everything on the illegals getting amnesty and on these hollowed-out charlatans who want to jump in front of the cameras being able to mobilize black people in support of him. He's being proven wrong on both counts. These bootlicks think that they can make a career out of being useful idiots. It just never occurred to them. When you take away an idiot's usefulness, all you have left is the idiot. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Frederica Moore, Carl Miller, Chevalier Foster, Mark Anderson, and William Ross. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.